Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Welcome to the afternoon session of the conference. Is it your first time in Korea? Oh, hands up. Especially welcome. 감사합니다. 안녕하세요. My name is Jong-Yul Park. I'm very glad to meet you. I'm very honored to preside the afternoon session. I'm currently working at CBS Korea as a chief editorial writer. It's not Columbia Broadcasting System in US, Christian Broadcasting System in Korea. And I have been a journalist for 27 years until now, and I'm former president of Journalists Association of Korea. I made the World Journal Conference for the first time in 2013. And today is the first day of conference, but it's just the beginning. We are planning for many tough schedules in a week. Now, we have to talk about the role of media for world peace and denuke in the Korean Peninsula. Personally, I think today's topic is very timely. As you know, an atmosphere of South and North Korean reconciliation is created with Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. And furthermore, after 20 minutes, South Korean President Moon Jae-in's special envoy will visit to Pyongyang. And they deliver President's letter to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and discuss the third North and South Summit and the US DPRK dialogue. And they will travel to China and US after returning. As you all know, the key issue is US DPRK dialogue. By the way, the condition of dialogue that the United States has made is denuclearization, a so-called CVID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement. But last weekend, US President Donald Trump said, North Korea called up a couple of days ago and would like to talk. We will be meeting and we will see if anything positive happens. So to be seen, the dialogue atmosphere of US DPRK is forming rapidly. I think this World Journalist Conference is actually the Journalist Olympics. As we have confirmed peace and harmony at Pyeongchang Olympic Games, I want this conference to be a great opportunity for you to recognize the world peace and Korean Peninsula, especially North Korea's nuclear issue. So, here together with me, 5 distinguished panelists. As you can see, everyone is a female panelist, except for just 2 Koreans, okay? Let me briefly introduce panelists to you. On the right, we have Ms. Hagit Limur, past president at the National Society of Professional Journalists in the United States and professor, University of Cincinnati. Please give her a big applause. Then we have Ms. Natalia Sevchak. She is a journalist editor working at Business Insider Polska, Poland. Please give a big applause. And then on my left, we have Ms. Natalia Portyakova from Russia. She is a special correspondent of Izvestia Daily. Then we have Ms. Ying Xue. She is working at Xinhua News Agency China as an executive director of World Affairs Study Center. Last but not least, we have Mr. Usuk Kenneth Choi, editor of Future Planning News Desk at Joseon Daily newspaper in Korea. And he is a vice president of JAK. Let's hear a presentation from now on. Well, maybe start from the President Limur. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. That was a lovely lunch, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed the lunch as much as I did and the conversation. I want to start, before I really go into my speech, I'd like to say that we were asked to submit these several weeks ago, and yet so much has changed since the speeches were submitted. Who knew that today there would be a delegation going from South Korea to North Korea? Who knew that there would be a chance of dialogue? But here we are. And so it's very fitting that we are at this conference with the theme of world peace that we have here on a day such as today, which is so historic. Well, on behalf of the National Society of Professional Journalists of the United States of America, I would like to extend our deepest appreciation for the invitation to speak at the 2018 World Journalist Conference. It is our honor to join such an esteemed group of journalists from the nations of the world. It is our hope to find the common threads that weave together all of our goals, which is to enlighten our citizens and to empower them with information with which they can make a better society. We've been asked to present today on the topic of the role of the press in the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and to share our perspectives on the peninsula's geopolitics today. Well, it's a topic that's been leading the news cycle in America more in the past year, perhaps, than in the previous 10. So I will start by recapping and offering perspective on recent events U.S. journalists have been reporting. And then I'll talk about the role of journalists from the perspective of the Society of Professional Journalists, which represents not only our 7,000 members, but also as a leading voice for all of the journalists in our nation, with our hopes for a free press worldwide. We gather here just as athletes from around the globe make their way home, having just shared their talents and their artistry as the Olympic flame burned brightly in the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. In countless interviews, we heard athletes from nation after nation echo the theme of the Olympic values, which include friendship, respect, determination, inspiration, and courage. In fact, the International Olympic Committee extols its goal to contribute to building a peaceful and better world by educating youth through sport practiced without discrimination of any kind, in a spirit of friendship, solidarity, and fair play. Those are the words of the Olympic Committee. And it's a goal that many might emulate as we face the challenges of a nuclear society, especially here on the Korean Peninsula. This past year has witnessed an escalation of real and perceived threats, with a series of missile launches of ever greater technological might, and a war of words between the leaders of North Korea and the United States, all reported at great length by journalists around the world. Additional reports describe a sophisticated expansion of the North Korean cyber weaponry program, with its potential for devastating, disruptive attacks on America, South Korea, and other targets, further aggravating the potential of the North's nuclear program. Kim Jong-un's rocket launches have elevated the threat assessment on the part of America's current administration. No one can escape the back and forth via statements and social media of the two leaders seemingly taunting each other over the size of each arsenal, including missives over whose nuclear button is bigger. President Donald Trump's tweets may have provided a richness of comedy fodder for America's late-night talk show hosts, but it is no joking matter to the people who live in South Korea or to American citizens on the U.S. mainland, whom Kim said in a speech on New Year's Day now all reside within the possible strike range of North Korea's nuclear capabilities. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson pulled no punches in an interview just 2 weeks ago on 60 Minutes. He said that while Kim Jong-un's speech made him nervous, it also stiffens our resolve, he said. That kind of threat to the American people by a regime like this is not acceptable. And the administration will make sure we are prepared for anything, including not only economic sanctions, but military options. But Tillerson said he was ready and willing to negotiate with Kim with a goal toward denuclearization, to bring North Korea out of its status as a hermit kingdom, isolated from the world diplomatically and economically. He said, quote, "Our diplomatic efforts will continue until that first bomb drops. And we don't know precisely how much time is left on that clock." Ominous language from a man who says he champions diplomacy, working toward dialogue with North Korea. Likewise, Vice President Mike Pence indicated he was open to meeting with North Korean officials at the Pyeongchang Olympics, but then journalists revealed that Pence had agreed to a secret meeting at the Blue House on February 10th, less than a month ago, with Kim Yo-jong, who is, of course, Kim Jong-un's younger sister, along with other North Korean leaders. This meeting was supposed to take place, but then it was canceled just hours before. North Koreans may have been angry that Pence had just days earlier denounced their nuclear program and announced that the U.S. is set to enact the toughest and most aggressive economic sanctions ever against North Korea. Sanctions that now have been imposed as of February 23rd to pressure North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Vice President Pence also promised to strengthen America's alliance with South Korea, and he threatened to continue to isolate North Korea until it abandons its nuclear and ballistic missile programs once and for all. Some reports blame the United States for this meeting that was supposed to take place but did not. And for certain, this language and the cancellation of that potential face-to-face diplomacy represents a lost opportunity. It stands in contrast to the hints of de-escalation coming from right here in Seoul. Kim Yo-jong's invitation of South Korean President Moon to talks in Pyongyang spell the opposite of the pressure on the Kim regime that the Trump administration has been trumpeting. And indeed, as we have said, since I submitted this today, that very meeting is taking place. The South Koreans seem to be promoting progress, while the Americans have been talking tough and warning that North Korea used the Winter Games for propaganda. Were the Games a beginning of engagement with Pyongyang? Clearly, President Moon has affirmed a desire for a path to real negotiations, to work toward denuclearization of the entire Korean peninsula, to forge a deal that would lessen the decade-long tensions and work toward peace. The developments of the past few weeks have presented the most promising opportunity to come along in years. Will it flower or will it wither on the vine? We are at a precipice that could tip in either direction. What an opportunity to build on the images that we have seen in the past month. Athletes from South and North Korea marching together, waving unification flags, depicting the entire Korean peninsula, joining forces on the women's ice hockey team, greeting each other warmly to honor the Lunar New Year holiday. We have seen a North Korean plane land outside Seoul, a member of the ruling Kim family enjoying sporting events and meeting with President Moon, extending an invitation to this summit. In the midst of winter, we have seen frozen relations begin to thaw. But with the holiday break behind us, it is time to get down to the business of arranging this summit that is taking place today, to the business of words leading to action. Certainly, based on polls published in South Korea, they indicate that 60 to 70% of the public supports what is happening today. Although they also report a generational gap, saying that younger South Koreans are withholding their support because they're skeptical of the recent developments and suspicious of the intent behind Kim regime's words. Worried also on the repercussions that unification would engender to the economy here in South Korea and to the military and to friendships with current allies. The world is watching, and it is doing so through the eyes and words of journalists. From the beginning of time, the recording of history has fallen to those willing to take the risk to put pen to paper. It is not always popular. Those of us in professional media in America today face an assault on our profession from our very own president. And yet, we persist because we know that what we do is essential to educating the citizenry so that the power of the people can rise to influence its leadership. In a sense, our reporting illuminates a path toward peace, but the Society of Professional Journalists does not believe reporters can actively work for peace or for any other political or economic goal. It is not our role. Our job is to gather information and inform. That in itself, though, can influence people toward action. The American tradition of professional journalism does not allow for activism or for our own personal opinions to direct our reporting. But, of course, there are media commentators, opinion writers, whose jobs is to do just that, to state their opinions. Their work is clearly labeled as commentary, and they are held separate in our country from reporters who must state the facts without bias or opinion. Reporters must present an accurate analysis of the present geopolitics of the Korean Peninsula. They may not include words that tell people what to do with that information. That is left to the reader or viewer and his or her own conscience. The Society of Professional Journalists believes that public enlightenment is the forerunner of justice and the foundation of democracy. We are known worldwide for our code of ethics, which I was proud to help rewrite several years ago to modernize its applications to the changing media of today. It is our belief that ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough. An ethical journalist acts with integrity, keeping in mind our 4 basic tenets: seek truth and report it, minimize harm, act independently, and be accountable and transparent. What does that mean to those unfamiliar with our code? It means that we verify information using original sources, putting accuracy topmost in our work. We provide complete information with context so as not to oversimplify sometimes complex stories. We attempt to be vigilant and courageous about holding those with power accountable, recognizing our obligation to serve as watchdogs over government and industry. We fight to shine a light on government business and to ensure that public records are open to all. We do this while considering the story's potential for harm. We balance our right to public information with the long-term implication of that information becoming public. We take into account public safety, national security, and private citizens' right to privacy. Because we believe that the greatest obligation of ethical journalism is to serve the public, we do not expect special treatment from those whom we cover, and we work to avoid conflicts of interest and to disclose any that are unavoidable. Perhaps most important, we take responsibility for our work. We encourage a civil dialogue with the public to explain the coverage choices we've made. We correct any inaccuracies immediately, and we strive to abide by the same high standards that we expect from those whom we cover. In many senses, we reflect those same Olympic values of which I spoke at the beginning of this presentation. Values that cited respect and courage as the means toward building a peaceful and better world. We do so as that world changes around us and as technology forces us to reinvent the way we carry out our duties. Despite shrinking resources and personnel, we remain committed to our role in this world as the stewards of tomorrow's history. That's what defines the role of the press. If we do our jobs well, citizens will find power to build a better world for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. It was a very great presentation. Thank you, Ms. Hagen-Rimor.
Thank you.
Let me turn to Ms. Natalia Shevchak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Annyeonghaseyo. Good afternoon, everyone. My homeland, Poland, is an independent country for almost 30 years. But we, Poles, still remember about war and its tragic consequences. We remember about Holocaust, occupation, communism, lack of security, and lack of freedom. Our painful history is the reason why we understand so clearly why peace is so important. The Korean War ended more than 60 years ago, but peace agreement has not been signed so far. To this day, we cannot say, at least officially, there is a peace on the Korean Peninsula. Nowadays, the situation on the Korean Peninsula is complex and involves more than 2 Korean countries. Unfortunately, steps taken by North Korea do not bring us closer to the peace. I think quite the opposite. Over the past years, North Korea continues to push ahead with its nuclear program, threatening to the peace on the Korean Peninsula and peace of the world. Kim Jong-un has walked away from the denuclearization process, and sanctions has not changed his behavior. There are no doubts. Problem with North Korea isn't the problem that goes away on its own. And this is the reason why we are here today. How we can help create peace on the Korean Peninsula, and therefore in the whole world. Before we will deliberate about the role of journalists for building peace on the Korean Peninsula, I would like to briefly present the point of view of the authorities in Poland about this issue. Less than a month ago, Polish President Andrzej Duda visited South Korea and the demilitarized zone too. He said, "We are trying to find out what should be done here so that North Korea is no longer a threat and how to solve the problem." In coming 2 years, Poland will be a United Nations Security Council member, holding a vice chairmanship of the UN Security Council Sanction Committee on North Korea, and this matter is among those on our agenda. President Duda added it was one of the subjects of his meeting with President of South Korea. The Polish head of state declared also that UN Security Council Forum, Poland wants to engage itself in the process aimed at de-escalating tension on the Korean Peninsula. Duda said, stressing that Poland supported the UN Security Council's peace through law motto as there will be peace in the world if international law is observed. The standpoint of Polish authorities is following. If someone violates international law, in the first instance, we should use peaceful means to persuade him to comply with the law. There's a primary sanctions. It really must be done with great consistency. I have just presented the Polish authorities' point of view for peace on the Korean Peninsula. But I'm a journalist, and journalists are not politicians nor a spokesman of the government. So how journalists from over the world, how we should help create world peace? How should we inform about the complicated situation on the Korean Peninsula, about peaceful unification and denuclearization? Journalists' work is based on 4 fundamental principles for me: reliability, truthfulness, impartiality, and precision. Moreover, we have to remember what is the journalist's most important task: to honestly report and describe reality, not make the judgments. Journalists should present the audience with the facts and not the opinions. Once you feed opinions instead of facts, the opinions become facts. Nevertheless, in the current situation of the Korean conflict, it appears that an independent journalist has a duty to support the pursuit of peace, stability, security, and the respect for human rights. Journalists has the right to criticize any initiative that seeks to escalate the conflict. Journalists' work is extremely important. Why? Because information is a power, and I think this is the biggest power that a human being can possess. It can impact on public discourse and can change geopolitical situation. The press have the opportunity to diffuse tensions before they lead to the conflict. Furthermore, I should be stressed that limited access to information make people easy to manipulate, and this is very dangerous for democracy and for peace too. Not without reason, American President Harry Truman once said, "You can never get all the facts from just one newspaper. Unless you have all the facts, you cannot make proper judgments about what is going on." During our work, we must not forget our enormous responsibility about the truth. Journalists must verify every information. They must be sure that all the reports they provide are real and they aren't fake news. Especially for World Journalist Conference 2018, I asked for comment the best fake news issue expert in Poland and one of the finest in Europe. This is Beata Biel, and she is coordinator for Concrete24. This is a project, a Polish TV and media group. She is working on online crowdsourcing solution for fighting fake news, disinformation, and building verified quality content. Beata Biel said, "Disinformation, lies, and fake news are a great threat to democracy, people's security, and world peace. Disinformation is already used as a tool to discredit people and institutions, to undermine trust, to split and polarize societies. It is used to call other people enemies, to accuse them of crimes they did not commit, but also to whitewash the guilt of those who are monsters to their own people. Is a tool for fomenting conflict, but also for building a false narrative. Fake news can make people believe everything. They also can disbelieve everything. And when people believe nothing, they just need one trigger to believe everything. It sometimes takes just one fake story to make neighbors become enemies. It's sometimes one small piece of disinformation that makes people despise, hate, and seek revenge. It's time up to sum up my presentation. It will be brief but important. Being responsible, professional, and ethical is the best way how journalists can help to bring about peace. Thank you for your attention. 감사합니다.
It's a nice presentation. Thank you, Natalia Swacek. Let me turn to Ms. Natalia Portiakova.
Yeah, we're acting on the principle the ladies first, as far as I understood. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, upon two reports, I feel that my points may seem a bit naive and banal while you are seasoned professional journalism, but I will have to repeat some major points that are very useful in the work of journalism, not only in Russia, but all over the world, according to my beliefs. I decided to make 6 points about journalists' do's and don'ts while covering Korean Peninsula affairs. And first of all, the major principle I deem very important is competence and responsibility. Speaking about Russia, I feel that old-fashioned Soviet-style school of journalism now has faded away. That means that we had to use very clear regional division among the journalists. But right now, apart from news agencies, each newspaper has just staff in Moscow, and we don't have regional correspondents in most cases. So that means that a journalist is writing everything about everything. One day you are writing on Africa, the other day you are covering European Union summit or whatever. So that means that sometimes journalists lack real deep knowledge and deep understanding on what is going on Korean Peninsula. And of course it's impossible to imagine that each newspaper will have Korean studies scholar working as a staff reporter, but still I suggest that journalists should dig more carefully, and it's a responsibility of each journalist to read more on the issue he's going to cover. The other advice or major point in covering all the affairs, including that of on Korean Peninsula, is never ignore expertise. Citing relevant experts is still a must in the most newspapers all across the world, including Russian newspapers. Speaking about Russia and Korea, I'm sure that Russia is really blessed with a pool of experts on Korean Peninsula, and you all know well that Russia is one of the few countries that has diplomatic relations with the North Korea. That means that our experts specializing on Korea are frequently traveling not only to the south but also to the north. So they have very good understanding and knowledge on what is going on in the north. And so I personally suggest that media workers, journalists should not disregard turning into professionals, especially in the case of Russia. The other point is a bit contradictory, as I suggest not to pursue sensations. To give you a bright example, you all know well the story of the leader of North Korean popular Moranbong Bank, Ms. Hyun, if I pronounce her name right. I'm sorry, I have a problem with it. This girl was said to be a lover of the North Korean leader, and several years ago she was rumored to have been executed on the personal order of the supreme leader because she participated in some pornographic videos or something like that. But here comes the Olympic, and we see her being photographed just next to the North Korean delegation and next to the South Korean leaders. So I believe that this example perfectly demonstrates that despite the secretive atmosphere that surrounds North Korea, no rumors, no interesting details that are not proved should not be taken for granted. The other point I suggest goes as follows. We should not demonize Pyongyang, and we should not mock Seoul. We all got used to the articles, mostly in the Western, but also in Russian newspaper, that ironize on Kim Jong-un and on the way of life in North Korea. But with the current rapprochement in the ties of South and North, I guess a new trend has emerged, and those who were not happy with their rapprochement between the two Koreas started to make jokes or to blame Seoul of being foolish to grab with pleasure the North olive branch, and moreover to pay money just for the simple dialogue. And of course we have, in ideal conditions, we have right to express freely our own thoughts, but at the same time, as far as journalists influence the public opinion, I believe that they must still refrain from bias and allegations and try their best to present both viewpoints, not only contras but also pros. The other point I would like to mention is realism and pragmatism. Very simple thing, but not everyone is capable of it sometimes. Saying that we should not demonize Pyongyang and mock Seoul, I should also mention that we should not make the opposite mistake, that is idealizing and exaggerating the achievements. One must understand that the resolution on the Korean Peninsula involves not just two Koreas, but also very important regional players, including Russia, China, Japan, and the US. And one must understand well the geopolitical situation in the region and from my point of view, understands that while China and Russia are mostly for the reconciliation and for for unification maybe of two Koreas, Japan and the US have a bit different viewpoints, and sometimes they may put a spoke on a wheel. Saying that, I meant that apart from analyzing steps and intentions of just Seoul and Pyongyang, one must always take into the consideration the wider geopolitical situation in the region and real intentions of the other players. And my last point would be the suggestion to stop dramatically alarmist publications and stop convincing public that the war on the Korean Peninsula is unavoidable. During the last year, we all got used to the aggressive statements and alarmist articles, especially in the Western media. Just to give you the example, two titles. Why the war between North Korea and the US may start by April, that suggests that the war is unavoidable. Or like North Korea poses a real threat of nuclear war. Those titles are very catchy, but perhaps a bit exaggerated. And I was personally struck not long ago when I saw the statement by the US State Department. It was issued upon the death of the US citizen Otto, who died in North Korea. And there was an advice to US citizens who are going to North Korea, if there are some who are wishing to do so. So there was an advice that before going to North Korea, you should draft a will and make other funeral wishes, which also suggests that North Korea is absolutely not a safe country and even a hostile country where one may die. And you here in North Korea may also remember well how your foreign ministry protested against an editorial in China state-run Global Times newspaper. That article suggested that Chinese people should not worry from the North Korean threat, as far as South Korea will be the primary target. And it was met with protest here in South Korea. So I believe that alarmist tone, too much of alarmist tone, should be avoided while covering the the Korean Peninsula issues, and one should never forget that in the case of Korean Peninsula and case of other conflicts all over the world, the dialogue and our wish for dialogue should be the imperative. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. It's very insightful presentation. Thank you, Natalia. Let me turn to Ms. Ying Xue. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my dear journalist colleagues. Today, it's my great honor to be here. So thanks to the organizers. At the Chile Day, we received warm welcome. So thanks to all the people who worked hard for this conference to be possible. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to be with you, excellent journalists from all over the world, to exchange our views on some world issues, including the denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. Just days ago, we saw the success of 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. That brings a new sunlight to the peninsula. Xinhua sent over 50 journalists to cover this great event. Reporters from Xinhua and other Chinese media did reports not only on the sports games, but also on the meetings between Republic of Korea officials and the DPRK delegates and other peace-related news. The meetings between both sides of the Korean Peninsula were as exciting as the Olympic Game itself. So Xinhua and other Chinese media put as much emphasis on the peace-related news as sports news. that not only reflects the sense of responsibility of Chinese media, but also reflect the good wish from Chinese people and the Chinese journalists of a better future on the peninsula. We all know that the road to success always has twists and turns. Big issue has no easy solution. Just as Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently told a group of reporters that relaxation is better than tension and dialogue is better than confrontation. For sure, realizing the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is our common goal, and the stance of the international community as well as that of China is unswerving to this end. However, one has to complete the journey step by step. He also said that just like pouring water into a cup, some may be upset because it is not filled up, while others may be happy that little is better than nothing. During the past century, the human society experienced 2 world wars, the Cold War, and numerous other different wars. The pains and the suffers during the wars remind us that we should never give chance to wars and never give up hope for peace. I guess everybody likes to see things as positive progress. So I hope there will be more progress in the peace, stability, and denuclearization process on this peninsula. More water in the cup. Historical experience tells us that whenever the Korean Peninsula situation is easing, there will be interference or even intentional backpedaling. Now it is the time to test sincerity of all parties. The international community should keep its eyes wide open to see who is a promoter of the peaceful settlement of the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue and who will become a saboteur that causes return to tensions of the situation. China's stance on the Korean Peninsula is clear and consistent, which is to realize the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and promote the peace and stability in the peninsula. In China, we all hope that the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue can be solved by peaceful means. You know that China proposes 3 persistences, which are sticking to realizing the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, adhering to maintaining peace and stability in the peninsula, and insisting on settling issues through dialogues and negotiations. So China also calls for all parties to take no more actions that may lead to tension or escalation of the situation, especially when there is already good signs toward peace and stability. We know that today there is a delegate from the South going to the North for talks. All the parties need to cherish this good start. We are journalists. We will keep close eyes to watch the process and be alert on anyone who take any actions to derail the effort. So my first point is that the constructive role of media is very important. Though in the past years, we have been frustrated again and again, we should always have believing that all the efforts for peace and stability are valuable. And if we, journalists, do our reports related to the peninsula with our good wishes together with our professional spirit, we can help to get more people in the world care about the denuclearization and the peace and stability in the peninsula. The second point I would like to talk is about something we need to be more conscious of. On the way here, while thinking of this topic, 3 ancient Chinese stories came to my mind. I think maybe we can get something from them. The first story is from a Buddhism Sutra translated into Chinese about 1,600 years ago. It is about a group of blind men and an elephant. As the elephant is very big, and the blind man never knew it and cannot see it as a whole. When a king brought an elephant to the blind man and let them touch and feel the elephant, each blind man got a different conclusion about what the elephant is like. One blind man said, "Elephant is like a very long, curled carrot," because he was touching the tusk of the elephant. Another one said, "No, elephant is like a very big dustpan," because he was holding the ear of the elephant. The guy who touched the foot of the elephant said it was like a stone mortar. And the one who touched the belly of the elephant said it like a water vat. All the blind men gave different description of the elephant, but none of them gave a whole picture of the animal, because each of them touched only a part. That is a very interesting phenomenon when we talk about some big issues. Different people may have different ideas due to the complexity of the thing. Each one sees only a part of the big thing, as it is difficult to see the whole. And each one believes he or she is right and others are wrong. But we know that to us journalists, our reports may be biased if we cannot see the whole of the thing. The second story is from the Qin dynasty, about 2,200 years ago. A minister wanted to kill the emperor and became emperor himself, but he did not know how many other ministers will follow him. He brought a deer to the emperor and other ministers, told them it's a horse. Some ministers were very surprised and told him, "It's not a horse, it's a deer." But there were also some other ministers who dared not point out his mistake. Just follow him to say, "It's a horse." Not before long, he killed all the ministers who said the deer was deer, and finally forced the emperor to suicide and took the power. This story is about confusion. Someone may intentionally make people confused, and some others may be forced to accept the wrong answer. As journalists, I hope we could always be clear of the fact and be loyal to the fact. No matter who says deer is a horse, we will say deer is deer, not a horse. The third story was recorded in books some 2,000 years ago. It said that there was a thief who planned to steal a big bell. But he was afraid that when he moved the bell, the sound of bell may attract attention of people. Suddenly, the thief got an idea. He plugged his own ears. The world became so quiet. Even when he moved the bell, he could not hear anything. He thought that now it must be safe to steal the bell. And of course, he was caught. This is a story of self-deceit. To us media person, nobody will do this kind of self-deceit things. But do we open our ears to all the related parties? Or we only listen to one or two parties and write about what they talk and plug our ears to other parties? This year will be a crucial year to the denuclearization of the peninsula. We hope this year could be a great turn, a turn toward peace and a turn toward harmony. We see that both countries on this peninsula show their strong wills to hold meetings and talks, instead of showing muscles and threatening each other. However, how to keep this momentum is still a big challenge. I believe if we, as journalists, can see things as a whole instead of only a part, can insist on reporting the facts, and can keep our ears open to all parties, we can help things to get better. This is the constructive role that we, people from media worldwide, can contribute to the denuclearization on the peninsula. I'll be very happy to learn your opinions. Thank you very much. Wish this conference successful.
Thank you. It was very informative and well-prepared presentation. Thank you, Ying-Shue. Now, last speaker, Mr. Woo-Seok Choi.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming to Korea. Sheshe from China. Shukran. Anybody from the Middle East? Yeah, shukran. Inala masabrina. Russia, spasiba. Spasiba, I guess. And dankeschön, merci beaucoup, gracias, and you name it. Sorry that I left somebody out, some country out, because I never been to or never been introduced to. Anyway, thank you for coming to the land of Olympics. This is a land of morning calm, but because of the Olympics we had, and the Olympics gonna start this, the Paralympics gonna start this Friday, so right now the whole country is geared toward the Olympics. The presentation I'm going to have, actually the topic, I don't know who set this topic, but in my opinion, denuclearization in Korean Peninsula and global peace, we are just a journalist. And my first question when I saw this title, is this achievable? And if this is achievable at all, can we make this happen? We are journalists. We are not the decision makers. Maybe this is just too big a burden on us. We report what's happening. And so I was thinking about it, whether we can actually do this and so on, and how we would be able to do it. So let me just venture into this nuclear stuff in this peninsula. I'm sure you want to hear what we think. I come from a conservative newspaper, but there are a lot of Koreans here who can differ, who has different ideas, and their voices can be heard. This is a free society, so everybody's entitled to their opinion. And unfortunately, in my opinion, North Korean leader is toying with nuclear weapons, which is not good for the world at all. So he's keep on firing, Nodong missiles, testing missiles. This is a horrible stuff. If this blows up in your door, it's a pretty catastrophic stuff. And they continue to do the military parade. This is the range of the North Korean nuclear threats. And this is the range that can hit the United States: Anchorage, Seattle, San Francisco, Honolulu, you name it. Actually, it will be all in the good part of the United States will be in range. So, the reason why I am pretty upset about what's happening in North Korea is because if the leader is I think the political leader, the number one job for the political leader should do is to feed its people. Feed the people first. I mean, if your people are starving, then what good is developing nuclear weapons, or what good is developing a military arsenal? Right now there's extreme poverty in North Korea, and the poverty level that I've been to very small bits of North Korea, but I never been or had an opportunity to explore the rural parts of the area. But it's really poor. The human rights condition is pretty bad. And yet this person is, developing nuclear weapons and military first policies and so on. So I think it doesn't fit right, in my opinion. And November last year, a North Korean soldier defected through the Panmunjom area. I don't know if you all watched this video clip. So it was like a movie, actually. He escaped the demarcation line. He crossed over, and the North Korean soldiers were firing at him. Miraculously, he survived. And when Korean doctors did an operation on him, and what shocked most of South Koreans, it's not the fact that he defected or whatever, but in his body, there were so many parasites. And one parasite, one worm, was as long as 27 centimeters long in your body. So when he survived, I mean, when he, after the operation, the medical doctor said that, you know, he had to give some medicines to kill these worms first in order to, you know, have his operation successful. So a lot of young people in this country, as I think somebody just mentioned about, you know, Korean youngsters are quite dubious about the reunification and so on, because these Korean youngsters cannot believe what kind of political leader is letting its own people starve, letting, you know, its people live in a condition so, you know, inconceivable to any young people in this country. And this is actually what's happening in North Korea, probably. So I'm pretty upset, and this guy is also upset, you know, because Kim Jong-un is still developing nuclear weapons. And the one thing I wanted to tell you, true, actually, the Minister Kang Kyung-hwa also said it. I don't think anybody in this country wants a war, including me. My son is in the military right now. I don't want him, you know, to have a combat operation against North Korea and risk him. Nobody in this country, practically, I would say that nobody wants a war. But if there's a war, if there's, God forbid there's a war, we can blow them apart. Why? Korea is 50 times richer than North Korea. I mean, our human resources is much bigger, our economy is much bigger, but the problem is, you know, we will win, but with a heavy cost. That's a big problem. There's a saying in Korea, if there's a fight between a beggar on the street and a gentleman on the street, who do you think is gonna win? The beggar. Why? He's more desperate. No, not only more desperate, but he's gonna put all the dirt onto the gentleman's clothes. So the gentleman's gonna run away. South Korea feels the same way. You know, I'm richer. I have all these nice assets, nice apartments and so on. If the beggar on North is coming down to South and telling me, okay, give me this and give me that, you know, up to a certain point, you will probably, you know, give away, you know, okay, I'll give you some food, I'll give you this and that. So just stay away from me. Don't, you know, push it on my face or whatever. But, you know, so far, up until, you know, today, I believe, you know, we've been actually subsidizing the North Korean Olympic teams coming down to South. We spent $3 million for these, you know, 300 people. A lot of young people don't like that. You know, if you're Olympians, you should come at your own expense. But just because of the, you know, to make this a peace Olympic, we have to pay them. So young people don't like it. You know, young people don't have jobs, or they have quite insecure about their future. And out of their own pocket, out of my pocket, we have to pay their expenses. Okay, so still that, we'll do it. But, you know, for global issues, if there's a war in this country, the global economy will be hit hard. And I think you should really pay attention to this, because Korea controls 80%, 80% of DRAMs produced in the world. Do you believe that? Please go and do your research. There's 80% of the DRAMs produced in the world is controlled by Korea. 50% of the DRAMs produced in the world is produced in Korea. 30% are produced in Japan and US, both Samsung and SK Hynix. So if we go down the tube, the global economy will go down the tube. If Korea cannot supply 2 months of DRAMs to your countries, your banking sector will go down. Why? Because the banking sector needs to refurbish DRAMs every now and then so that the system can, you know, run up, you know, up and going all the time. But if we stop producing DRAMs, all the banking sectors will go down. If banking sector goes down the tube, global economy goes down the tube. That's why a lot of people are really afraid that, you know, if any minimal war type of thing happens, and God forbid that it destroys these semiconductor, you know, fabs. That's the real danger to it. So there was discussions about surgical strikes by President Trump. A lot of Koreans worried, including me. I really worried. When, you know, I was in Davos Forum this year in Switzerland, and President Trump kept on saying about North Korea bombing, blah, blah, blah. I asked Ashton Carter, former Secretary of Defense. I happened to ask him because he was my teacher at Harvard. and I just happened to know him very well, and he wrote a piece in 2007 that U.S. should bomb North Korea. So I went up to him, and I asked him, do you believe what Donald Trump says? He said, just without a hesitation, he said, hell no. Why? Because in 2007, there was a small window of opportunity that North Korea cannot retaliate. This time, you know, the possibility of retaliation is so tremendous that there's no way we can sort of block off all the North Korean possible retaliation. So that's why he said, throw out the window. But why did these two guys go to Republic of Indonesia? Anybody from Indonesia? Okay, you check. These two guys were there, right? In January 24th, right? Secretary Mattis and Herbert McMaster was in Indonesia. Right after that, these two guys went to Vietnam. Anybody from Vietnam? Okay, well, they have some visa problem, right? But anyway, I just overheard somebody from my team that they're trying to get him in. But anyway, these two guys went to Vietnam. And you know what they told him? Do you know what these two guys told President Jokowi? Okay, I'll give you a scoop. You go back and ask President Jokowi. These two guys said, we will bomb North Korea. So people from Indonesia and Vietnam called me up and says, Ken, this is what's going to happen. Either you get out of the country or be ready. I said, hell no, it's not going to happen. But anyway, and I think maybe because of their warnings, and I think maybe Indonesia still have good relationship with North Korea, or at least have diplomatic relationship with North Korea, and so does Vietnam. So maybe the North Korean leader felt really threatened, and that's why he replied to all our President Moon's initiative on inviting North Koreans to the Olympics and so on. Well, anyway, so far, so North Korea is not firing any test missiles, as Minister Kang said about, God forbid if they ever do that, the sanctions will be tougher. So this is the military targets. I believe that my intelligence tells me that United States can look into every single corner of North Korea. So it will follow where Kim Jong-un is. And if it wants to kill Kim Jong-un, it can. So this is the military comparison in the region. North Korea has 1.1 million soldiers. We have only 490,000 soldiers in South. But I think we can win because our military capability is much, much bigger. This is the U.S. forces in the region, pretty big. There's about 30,000 U.S. soldiers in this peninsula and about another 30,000 in Japan and Guam and so on. So it's a pretty big number of U.S. soldiers stationed here. So I think war is a suicide. If he ever triggers a war, it's a suicide. He will die. The question is, if he does that, will he die himself? If he dies himself, thank you. Thank you. But I'm not sure if he's going to die by himself. If he fires, not only, there's tons of military, missiles and stuff like that, but if he fires long-range, not ballistic missiles, but long-range, just regular cannons into city of Seoul, it will be a chaos. And you guys are sitting in the middle of the heavy target by North Korea, actually. This is the town. This is the place where the North Korea would strike first. So hope that while you're here, that never happens. And hope, even if you guys go back, that never happens. So somebody asked about nuclear armament in South Korea to these so-called small dragons who would be president. One of them is a president actually now. And this was asked before these guys ran for presidential election. As you see on the top, none of them believe that South Korea should arm nuclear weapons. Why? Why do you think so? Why do our political leaders do not even consider developing nuclear weapons on our own? Part, yeah.
Too expensive? Provoke further.
No, I think we provoke North further, but at the same time, our economy is so globally intertwined. It's not America alone, but because we are member of IAEA, the global community will shun us. And if we cannot trade, we cannot survive. So we are not going that path. We don't want that path. So whether you're conservative or liberal, as you can see on these, these political leaders, they're all, conservative and liberals. None of them even consider developing our own nuclear weapons. We don't want it because we want to live better. We want to be as strong as Japan or as the United States. We want to have a good life, period. Our young people want to be able to enjoy good life. So now I just leave that, the North Korean things at this place. Now I just researched a little bit. And right now, even today, there are about 60 places in the world there's armed conflict. 60 places. And maybe some of your countries do suffer some of these conflicts as well, just as we do. We have conflicts between North and South, and once in a while, they blow us up and stuff. But anyway, this is a tragic stuff. This is the major truths going on around the world. Gaza, I think somebody's from Palestine. Yeah, there's still some bombing going on. From Israel, same thing. In the Syria, I don't think we have anybody from Syria, but this is a pretty tragic case. Bosnian War, the reason why I put this up is because anybody here has been to a war zone? Anybody a war correspondent? Okay, I was a war correspondent in Bosnia. I was the first journalist ever to cross to Sarajevo when the peace accord was signed in 1995. So I was pulled off at gunpoint by Bosnian militia. It was pretty scary, but anyway, I was young then. And, I didn't know what I was doing, so I thought I'd never die. But anyway, it was a pretty bad experience because I checked in a hotel, Holiday Inn in Sarajevo, and the left side, the next morning I went outside, and I saw whole facade was gone, blown off. And I couldn't believe I slept in a hotel like this. Today, the hotel looks much better. And during the December, I went to the Sarajevo Olympic Stadium. And the entire Olympic field was covered with snow and 50,000 crosses. They used the Olympic Stadium as a grave site. So 50,000 people died. I had nothing to do with Bosnia. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not, the Serbian, religion. I have nothing to do with it, but I cried. I cried because this great Olympic stadium was turned into a gravesite. And today, I'm saying this to you because I don't want my Olympic stadium in Pyeongchang turned into a gravesite. I really don't want that. And so what should journalists do? And actually, people before me, they all discussed about, what a journalism should do and, what journalism is all about. So, I'm part of it. And, these are the number of the nations that participated. I hope that your national flag is here. But we are just a journalist. We are an observer. We record history. And we are not the decision makers. Again, you all know that. We are not decision makers. What we do best is influence the public, influence the decision makers. That's what we do. So, we are not the perpetrator. I hate all those mass murderers. I hate Milosevic because he was the one who ethnic cleansed all the Bosnians. I don't like, the Boko Haram. I don't like these people who are killing people innocently. Killing innocent people is a crime. So what shall we do as a journalist? I believe, reporting the truth is really, really important. Whatever is happening out there, you report the truth. As a journalist, we discuss about the responsibilities. We discussed about a lot of different things. But, truth plus in times of this crisis, when a war can happen, I think it's important that journalists, write some stories projecting what's going to happen in the future, and projecting, if we choose this way, that way, what's going to happen to our lives. And then maybe, write stories with whatever happened in the past. Lebanon, for example, was Paris in the Middle East. And then war hit that country. And Lebanon is in total shambles. It's a pity. It's a pity. And sometimes I wonder how Lebanese politicians could have prevented that from happening. To tell the truth, I'm still doing some research. If you can help me, that would be pretty good. And free press is quite important. I put this up. This is the former managing editor, Turner Catledge of New York Times. He quoted directly from President John F. Kennedy that if New York Times had written more stories about Bay of Pigs, he would not have decided to invade Cuba in 1961. Meaning, what does that mean? If New York Times at the time withheld a lot of stories because of national security, they believe. But in hindsight, John F. Kennedy complained to the managing editor that if you wrote all those things, dismissing about the national securities, and then all the truth comes out, then he might have opted not to invade Cuba. And the reason I put this up is because, free press is important. When you're in a position to decide what is national security and what's the right to know of the people, you really have to think hard. And I think, whether you're conservative or left or liberal or whatever it is, the society needs to get all the facts, all the truth, and all the projections out to the public so that the decision makers, can choose from what's happening. And I think the reason I put this free press is very important to you is because when the more diverse the opinion is, the more options the political leader will think. And then he will choose whether to go to war or not to go to war, whether to commit something that's horrendous or not to commit something horrendous. And as a journalist, I'm a career journalist, and I believe all of you are. So, we all know that what we should be doing. I just wanted to give you some of my opinions, some of what's happening in Korea. In Korea right now, the left, right, whatever, they are churning out stories after stories on North Korea. A lot of people are saying this, and a lot of people are saying that. And the president of Korea will probably just go through all that and try to evaluate his own policies and so on and make choices. Hopefully, those choices are wise choices that we don't have to go to war. Thank you very much. Peace be with you all the time.
It's a great PowerPoint, but it's a 30-minute presentation. It's like a lecture, not a presentation. As we have seen, he's very fluent in English. Okay, we have written all 5 distinguished panelists' presentation. We have covered a wide range of issues that role of the media for peace, world peace, and solving the North Korea's nuclear issue, and worldwide conflicts, and so on. At this point, I will ask panelists one by one a question for the more understanding as a moderator. Maybe I can start from President Hagit Limor. You explained the series of dialogues between the 2 Koreas and United States and DPRK, but there is a nervous conflict in the US-DPRK dialogue, a so-called whether preconditioned dialogue or non-conditioned dialogue. Last week, North Korea said there will be no talks with the United States if they come any preconditions. So how do you think about the conditions of dialogue?
Personal opinion?
Or?
Well, as a journalist, I understand that politicians often want to set rules, ground rules, before they speak. But as a human being and as a mother, I believe that you should sit down first and make rules later. I believe that dialogue gives birth to understanding. And if you break bread together, as we all are planning to do this next week, we will sit together, we will raise a glass of wine, and that's how you start to get to understand people and to see that there is more, really, that unifies us. We are more alike than we are different. So I believe 100% in dialogue and make the rules and the conditions later. However, I'm not one of the politicians.
Okay. No, personally, I agree in your opinion. Sitting down is first, okay. And now let me move on to Ms. Natalia.
Is it work?
Yeah. You explained the role of the journalists and the problem of fake news. However, you emphasize sanctions and pressure rather than dialogue regarding the North Korean nuclear issues. So, how do you think about it?
Again, personally, I agree with them because the sanctions is the point of view of Polish president, of Polish authorities. Personally, I think that dialogue is the essential to solve the Korean problem, North Korean problem, nuclearization process, and we should negotiate, discuss to improve the situation on the North Korean peninsula. And I hope, it could be a key to solve the Korean problem or solve the Korean conflict.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, now I will ask Natalia Portiakova. You emphasize journalists' do's and don'ts. It's very impressive. But however, in the subject of your realism and pragmatism chapter, you explain that the different attitude, including Russia and China, and United States and Japan regarding the two Koreas reconciliation. For example, stand for or weary. So, it seems, I think, some controversial. Please explain that.
Well, I can't see any real contradiction in what I have said. I just meant that many players, many stakeholders in the region have different interests. And while Russia must have an economic interest in North Korea, in two Koreas' reconciliation and probable reunification, China, well, the major interest for China is stability on its borders. Japan, for instance, has this abduction issue that it wants to resolve, first of all, as well as safety for the citizens. And speaking about the US, its primary interest is to gain more, or at least to have the same amount of influence in the region, because it's not only about Korea, North and South, it's also about the influence in the region where China is getting more and more influential and more expansive. And besides, I also meant that maybe U.S. allies, namely Japan, have a kind of fear that the current rapprochement between the two Koreas may hamper the unity that existed just not long ago between the US, South Korea, and Japan.
Yeah, in the sense that there will be another chance to talk, the floor. Okay. And now let me move on to Ms. Ying Xue. You emphasize the efforts for peace and stability, especially three ancient Chinese stories, very impressive. You described the North Korean nuclear issue as an example of an elephant. Some people said North Korea's issue is equation of higher degree. So, but I think it means the complexity of the North Korean nuclear issue. However, if North Korea continues to provocative act, is peaceful way the only solution even there? How do you think about it?
Okay, this lunchtime, I was sitting next to the spokesman of the foreign ministry. I got an impression from him that the South Korean people really want peace. And I get my confirmation from Mr. Choi, yes, the South Korean people want peace. And I would like to say that Chinese people want peace too. So maybe we can change our angle of mind to some other side, not one against other, but from a kind of connection worldview. We know that the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games has a slogan. It's called Passion Connected. Actually, maybe we can see our world as a connected world. From this point, we can understand the denuclearization on the peninsula and many other world issues very differently. If you give me some minutes, I would like to talk about a tree, a very special tree. Maybe Haggis know it. That tree is called Pando, P-A-N-D-O. Maybe you can Google it. You know Pando? It's a kind of quaking aspen, and it is very big. It occupies an area of about 43 hectares. That equals to 106 acres. You can imagine how big is the tree. And because after I heard of that tree about 3 years ago, at that time I was based in Los Angeles as overseas correspondent of Xinhua. I went to see the tree. It is in Utah, the state of Utah of the United States. And when I saw it, I was shocked because from above the soil, you will see about 40,000 aspens. All of them, we can call it a tree because it looks like a single tree, individual tree. But actually, the scientists found that under the soil, all the 40,000 trees shared one common system of root. So that's why it lives so long. It lives up to now about 80,000 years. So it is the biggest single organism in the world, and it is also the biggest tree in the world. Because the root system is so vast, the tree is so big. So actually every tree we saw from above the ground contribute to the whole organism. So if we look from above the ground, we see individual trees, but from the whole, we see they are all connected. So from this tree, maybe we can understand that we, human society, is like this tree. This tree, because it shared the connection of the root system, it survives all kinds of disasters, such as earthquake, drought, wildfire, flood, and many, many others maybe. So if we, human society, can have this kind of emphasis on our connection, we will see the world differently. Okay, so maybe we can see the connection between China and the South Korea like this. Maybe between the China and the Korean Peninsula like this. We are not only share a border with the North, the DPRK, we also have other connections with the South Korea, such as I can give you some facts and numbers. Now, China is the largest trading partner of South Korea, and the South Korea is the third largest trading partner of China. And there is an amazing figure that every day there are about 30,000 people flying over between the two countries. 30,000 people every day. So you can see the connection between China and South Korea. So with this kind of connection, China really hope there will be peace and stability in the Korean Peninsula. I think this is very convincing figures and facts. And then for us, from people from different countries, if we see that all of us are connected, all of our nations and peoples are connected, the world will be different. So China proposed to see our world as a human community with shared destiny. I don't know whether you heard of this. It was in 2012, the first time that the Chinese government proposed that we should see our world as a human society with shared destiny. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think if we can see the world like this, nothing is better than peace.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Now, last, I'll ask Mr. Choi. I agree with your comments. We are just journalists, not decision maker. But you explain relation between global economical influence and possibility of Korean War. So, could you give us more explain that?
He just changed the question, actually. I was thinking about which is more important about freedom of press and truthful reporting, but he just changed that. I've been a business journalist for the past, some odd years anyway. So on top of my head, Korea is like, 6th largest producer of automobiles. If you add them all up, it's about 6.5 million a year. Some in India, some in United States, some in Indonesia. Will become planted in Indonesia and Turkey and so on. So car alone is pretty big. Samsung Electronics, it's headquartered here. It's about $200 billion company. It's selling pretty wide ranges of products, not only from the semiconductor, but it's selling cell phones. I'm sure if Samsung cannot sell cell phones, they will produce in Vietnam and sell to the rest of the world. But still, when I don't know if you'll remember when there was this huge earthquake in Japan. Does anybody remember? The automobile supply chain got all screwed up. So things like that, times about 100 times will happen. It's not just an automobile chain. Supply chain that will get screwed up, but a lot of things will screwed up. Anybody from Thailand? Nobody, right? But in Thailand, a few years ago, there was a flood. And as a result, it flooded all the manufacturing facilities, all the Japanese manufacturing facilities in Thailand. And it screwed up entire supply chain for the Japanese automakers and Japanese electronic manufacturers. And because of that, actually, some Korean Hyundai Motor Company or some other companies were able to jump in. But if a war strikes out in this peninsula, similar things will happen. When there was a flood in Japan, flood in Thailand or earthquake in Japan, the global GDP probably sank about 0.5%. I think if there's a war in this country, some people, this is just a pure speculation, nobody can really calculate it, but some people speculate that maybe 2% of global GDP will just be wiped out, because Korea cannot supply not only the DRAMs, but let me just tell you this: Tektronix. You know what Tektronix is? Tektronix is a oscillator. It's a high-tech equipment mostly manufactured in the United States, but they come to Korea to test the equipment. Okay. Lexus, the Japanese car, before they launch into the United States, they come to Korea and launch first in Korea. Why? Because Korea is the most wired society in the world. Any feedback, Lexus, the Toyota people tells me that if they go to US and launch it, it takes about 6 months to get all the replies back. In Korea, they launch it. If they screw something up, they will get all their responses back in 2 weeks. And then they will be able to fix everything and then sell it to US and the rest of the world. So things like that will be gone, will be disappearing. And a lot of people think that this is just a quite nominal thing. Okay, Korea off the map, global economy, no big deal. Yes, Korea only constitutes 3% or 4% of the global economy. But still, the point is, Korea, a lot of Koreans don't even realize how big we are in certain areas. I'm not saying, we are big in all areas. We're as big as US or, but whatever. Just think about this DRAM thing. Can you imagine if Korea, there's a war, DRAM shuts down and your cell phone will not function? You think it will function? No, I guarantee you it will not function in 2 months because people out of DRAMs cannot refurbish all these, Wi-Fi areas and the networks and stuff like. It will be all gone. Chinese are investing heavily in DRAMs, but it takes some time for the Chinese DRAM manufacturers to catch up and come up to the level where Samsung has established over the past 25 years. So I strongly believe that it's not just us going to be in trouble. It will be the global economy in trouble. So, when you go back, right, to your own decision makers, that it's a big, big problem if there's a war in this country. And, if I just beg you that things like that never happens or we don't even venture into that area at all. And that's, as Ms. Young-shi said, let's live in peace and prosperity and, enjoy Korea as much as you can and bring your families back to Korea. We'll go to your country and let's live in peace.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your sincere answer. Now, I'd like to open the floor for discussion, Q&A. But we have just 10, 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. So I'd like to take 2 or 3 questions. Please, your hand. No?
So
A room full of reporters?
Gentlemen? Specified panelist.
Thank you so much. Let's first, I take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this conference. I'm very proud to be here in South Korea. This is the first time I'm in this part of the world, and I'm very thankful for the organizers. I'm thankful also for the participants of this in this conference. I found that it was very interesting. All of them gave us many useful and fruitful informations or thoughts, and especially Mr. Woosuk. I think his experience was very important. Above that, let me put some questions, because there is a lot of my colleagues who wanted to put questions. Do you think in South Korea that not only wishes, hopes, not only utopia, not only ideal thoughts can resolve problems, but the when you need peace, and this is understood, your pragmatism is very important, but you don't think that on the long run the peaceful cohabitation between North and South is a very important goal, very important target for both sides than the conflict? And do you think on the long run South Korea can benefit from a possible unification of the two countries? Do you think the superpowers will let this happen? You don't think that the problem of Korea is its strategic position? You have China, you have Japan, you have Russia, you have also the US. So this conflict is not, do you think it's not related in somehow with this location, this strategic position of your country, Mr. Sook? Thank you so much.
Why me?
You're
Because you
fluent
are
in
a
English.
local.
Okay.
You can't answer.
If Korea gets united, I think there will be tremendous benefit. But young people may disagree with me because, you know, I think younger generation has more tendency like, you know, let them live as they are, let us live the way we are. And the difference is so big. And actually, my newspaper company gives scholarship to like 10 students every year, whoever defected from North Korea. And we asked them, what is the single most difficult thing that living in South Korea? And every single one of them said, the Korean. We go, what do you mean Korean is difficult? They say, there are too many English words in our language that they cannot understand. So over the past 65 years of separation, you know, for instance, we use this, we say cup. North Koreans don't understand that. We say bus. You know, North Koreans don't understand that. Golf, have no idea what golf is. So, you know, something that all 53 million South Koreans just take it as our own language. I mean, when we don't have any words, we just import them, right, and use it. But North Korean students, they have very big difficulties in even communicating in a very delicate issues. So I think, you know, the country has lived so long apart, and maybe it has digressed. But I still, maybe I'm an older generation. I hope I'm not that old, but you know, my young people will probably think I am. And I still believe that there is a very, very fundamental benefit we can gain for reunification. You know, just look at Germany, what it did. It took them 20 years to you know, get everything straightened out. It may take us 50 years to get everything straightened out, but I think it's still pivotal, and I think it's important that we live together because, you know, we are one people basically. And just to add one thing about the what these you know, giant nations around us will let us. I think, you know, they may not, and I have no doubt in my mind, China, Japan, Russia, and United States will act according to their national interest. So we are not going to beg anybody to, you know, just please let us live together. We just have to be strong enough to live together. And I think it is probably my job, our journalist job, to educate Koreans that our surrounding nations will not do something for our own benefit out of nothing. We have to earn it. For that matter, you know, I don't know whether President Moon right now is doing the right thing or he's doing the wrong thing, but I like to give him benefit of the doubt, and hopefully we try this way, that way, and see whether we can, you know, get something done from here and maintain peace and prosperity in the region.
Any question? Yeah, ladies.
Yeah, I'm Nurila from Malaysia. I would like to ask this Miss America about several very hostile and strong remarks from Donald Trump. And because of that, I think it makes the North and the Korean come together and negotiate. Or in other factors, I just want to know what Americans feel about Trump's statement. Well, I'm a journalist. I personally feel I'm more afraid of his comment than the North Korean attacks. So what do you think of that?
It's very interesting because I was sitting next to the secretary at lunch, and she said that she felt like the tough words from Trump are one of the reasons that the talks are taking place tonight between the Koreas. But what are the Americans' viewpoints, the American people's viewpoints? Americans are very divided right now over the leadership of President Trump. As you know, he won without the popular vote, so the majority of the voters did not vote for him. And in this past year, He has proven to be one of the most unpopular presidents that we have ever had. And I think one of the main reasons is a matter of trust. So we are here at a conference where we're talking about world peace, and you cannot have peace without trust. And so for a lot of Americans, it's hard to trust because you hear one thing one day, and mostly in social media, tweeting, and then the next day, you might see the exact opposite words. So there's a level of distrust right now within our own country of what our leader, the president, says. I can only imagine if we can't figure him out, how the rest of the world views us. And you know, I really appreciate everything that everyone on this panel has said, because I really believe that you have to have words of trust. We're journalists. Our craft is our words. It's our currency. And you know, I sit here between the two Natalias, and I will tell you, I am half Polish. My father's from Poland. My mother's from Russia. So I'm actually a mixture. And all of us, we are not just one thing. We're human beings, and we have, you know, only one way to move forward, in my opinion, and it is trust. And I can tell you that I don't believe right now that the words of our leaders are leading to a lot of trust in the world.
Okay, unfortunately, just last question. Oh, lady. I can remember your name. Oh, sorry. Wow.
Just a very short question to our Korean colleague. You know, you said we are not journalists and not decision makers, but they influence. You looked at your media here. Just want to understand what kind of role the media actually is played. Is it influencing your government in a particular fashion, or is it divided? Because you've just talked about the fact that the youth are divided. But how do you see your media playing a role in this? Not a role really, but is it influencing, as you said, the government?
Hope we do. We hope we do have influence over the government, but mostly I think it's the power of truth. We are bringing things up from facts, and then we put some analytical things here and there, and we try to put things in perspective. And then people read it, and when people agree, we have about 1.6 million daily, copies every day, and website readers about 10 million, and we have a TV. So in my opinion, my newspaper and media company is doing what we can to educate and to bring out the facts to our readers, and then the readers are putting pressure to the influencers or decision makers. So we are having an indirect influence to the policymakers. And the policymakers, they read our newspapers as well. And so our role is to the number one thing is bring out the truth and bring out our opinion in an opinion section, not in the facts sessions. But by doing so, why we are doing it? We believe that what we are doing is not to benefit our own newspaper company or benefit me, but we are doing this to benefit the country. And sometimes maybe we have, we write things that's not popular, but we write things that if we believe it must be done this way, some other newspapers or some other media will come out and they counter-argue and so on. So there is this healthy, constructive, argument going on, debate going on. And sometimes, raising the debate on certain issues is our role, or throwing some agendas is our role. So right now, my newspaper company, for instance, is taking very seriously on this nuclear debacle, because we believe that this is one of the issues that can really make or break our nation's future. So we don't want to give out, inherit our oil, our soil with contaminated with all these nuclear, materials and stuff like that. We want to inherit our nation, our territory, our environment in a nice and safe and clean to our next generation, and hope that they can live in a very conducive way. So maybe I don't know whether I answered your question directly, but I think I'm trying my best. We are trying very best, and I think, even Mr. Park, he belongs to a different organization, but still, we argue, we bring out truth, and we try to facilitate, ideas and see if the policymakers adapt it. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But and sometimes they listen to us, so things turn out to be better, and sometimes it's not. So the whole host of result is different. I cannot guarantee, or I cannot tell you that we are the right guys and they are the wrong guys. I'm just saying, I think we are quite modest in the sense that we try to bring out diverse opinions and let the try to put as many buffet menus on the table so that the policymakers or decision makers can choose in a very diverse way, so that he goes home very nice and happy. So that's my answer. Short question, long answer. Sorry.
Okay, unfortunately, now time is finished due to our time schedule. So it was very exciting and stimulating and useful and informative discussion. Thank you for your participation to our discussion. Thank you. And I have something to tell you. Please come to first floor lobby at PM 3:40, punctually, PM 3:40. You will visit Parliament of Seoul Metropolitan City and Dongdaemun Design Plaza, and we will enjoy dinner hosted by Seoul Metropolitan Vice Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Let's take a picture.